Welcome back, crew. It's January, and that means we are getting into a new game of the month, and we are starting 2024 strong with 13th Age by Pelgrane Press. This is one I've been excited for. If you guys remember last January with all the OGL excitement, we'll say, from D&D 5e, this is one of the ones that's offered up as a really good alternative if you're looking to kind of branch into fantasy outside of D&D. So it's been on my shelf for a little bit, but we finally had an opening, and thought let's dive into it. So, if you guys are new to the channel, each month we pick a different tabletop RPG. We go over how to build a character, the core mechanics, the ins and outs of combat, and we end the month strong with a live actual play of the system where we give away a free copy of the core PDF rulebook to one lucky viewer. And this won't be any different. We'll be holding our game, our live actual play for 13th Age, January 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, which is a Thursday. There'll be a link down in the description. Like it, click notify me, and join us to get to see this system played out live at the table. And hopefully, you hit the nat 20 and win the raffle and be able to bring back a core rulebook to be able to run some games with you and your table. But yeah, let's dive into it. So today we're going to be going through our first impressions of the system. This is just kind of we've done a casual read through of the rule book, kind of looking through, checking out some of the art, some of the mechanics. This is some of the things that we're interested in kind of finding out more about or kind of seeing how it plays out at the table. This one I'm excited for. As I mentioned, it's was one of the ones that's recommended pretty often as a 5e alternative. And from what I've heard about it, it has like a lot of cool options for players. And kind of with my leaf through too, I kind of saw that as well. It seems like it's pretty. The rules are very improvisable as well as kind of flexible for game masters and players to change. They even have different rules if you wanted to borrow mechanics from other classes that they've got in the system. And it's always kind of cool to see that baked in and acknowledged in the system. I know a lot of 5e players, myself included, back in the day, were pretty eager to homebrew stuff, but I always like, because 5e really didn't mention the homebrew aspect too much. I liked how this one gave some guidelines and some, at least some thoughts on how you can do that with the different classes. So I thought that was cool. With this, it's a D20 system. If you've watched the channel, you know I love D20 systems, so definitely happy on that side. And I think that's too another cool piece to make it a good alternative for people that may be interested in branching out of 5e as well, because if you started with a D&D system or a D20 system, I should say, it's one of those things that's almost ingrained in you. I started with either 3.5 or Pathfinder, and it's still ingrained in my head, the love for the D20. So I think that's really cool and kind of a good bridge for those who may be coming from the 5e side of things. Uh, with this too, and kind of speaking of D&D, the designers for this system both worked on 3E and 4E for D&D. And it's kind of cool. They had like a little section on that, kind of acknowledging some of the things they liked or some of the things they took and tried to tweak from the criticisms from both 3E and 4E. So I thought that was kind of cool. It's kind of unique to have two designers on that side from kind of one of the biggest, I think 5e is still the biggest, but 3.5 I think is like one of the most iconic versions of D&D we'll see. And 4e where they tried a lot of new things. So I think that's kind of cool to kind of bring those two together and branch into something new. And one of the cool things too with this system is kind of the design philosophy, and especially when it comes to combat, because with D20 systems, like some of the other pieces aren't usually too different. Like the adventuring spot, you're going to be rolling skill checks, you're going to be adding your attributes. One big thing we'll get to a second is how background points play into things. Uh, but the combat philosophy they're going for is quite a bit of a difference than 5e. They wanted it to be quick and kind of fast and kind of cinematic, for lack of a better word, on that side. So they wanted to kind of keep that aspect. They still wanted some tactical aspects to it too. But one of the things they recommend, or they designed it for, I should say, is its gridless combat. So that'd be kind of cool to see on that side. It's always nice to be able to use Theater of the Mind with a system that was made for Theater of the Mind. So I'm looking forward to trying that out with the live actual play. Uh, with that too on this side, and especially seeing if it kind of is fast as well. Looking through the character creation pieces, we're gonna have a whole video where I do a deeper dive, but it does seem pretty quick to, or not easy to build into a PC and kind of get your own player character up and running. There's a couple things I've liked with that side. I like how the background system works. With that, where you assign points into a background, and the game master decides if it's going to be relevant to the role. Don't worry, we're going to be doing a deeper dive in that, both the character build and probably the mechanics episode build, just so you can kind of get a more in-depth aspect of how that plays out. And a quick read, I'm pretty intrigued with that. I think that'd be kind of a cool way to do it, rather than having hard and fast skills, kind of having your background be the relevant factor. And then one of the examples they mentioned, if you're a cat burglar, kind of what skill or what situation could you apply that background as a cat burglar to? And you could have multiple different backgrounds that you have points in, and the points kind of determine what you add to your role if they're relevant, as the game master says. So I thought that's cool. I'm looking forward to diving into that a little bit more. One of the things that I think seems pretty interesting, especially this kind of goes along with character building too, as well as world building and kind of running the game too. One of the big things that they have, I think, within the system is their icons. So there's 13 icons, and they encourage you as you're building your player character as well as the game master running the game to weave these 13 icons. These 13 people are like they're great people. They're great or terrible people, I should say. They could be allies, villains, um, between. It doesn't really matter. Basically, they give you some descriptions on that side, encourage the game master to kind of flesh it out further, and they encourage player characters when they're building their characters to build in a some type of a relation to the icon too. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out and kind of what ideas I may have for running the system too, and kind of looping in some of those icons. I think that's a cool way because to give bad guys or allies that already have stakes and kind of some development within the world, and allowing your players to build themselves in the world, which I think is always a really cool thing. But overall, I'm pretty stoked for this one. I mean, the art looks pretty sick from what I've seen so far in the book. I'm liking the design philosophy with kind of the quick combat. I love grid-based combat, but I definitely leaning a little bit more towards some of the systems that don't have the grid combat. Like Pathfinder 2E is one of my favorites, and I love having the grid for that. And I feel like that scratched my itch for grid combat. So I've been really liking with some of the ones that don't have the gridless or have the gridless, and so you can really kind of get into the more theater of the mind side of it too. It's always kind of cool to have the balance. We have multiple systems that can do different things well. And I like how they're leaning into this to kind of set themselves apart, as well as kind of keep the action moving a little bit. I feel like grids can sometimes slow it down, and with theater of the mind, if it's designed for theater of the mind, should hopefully speed that up a little bit. So I'm hoping that comes true there. So this is definitely gonna be what I'm excited for. Come back Wednesday as we go through and build on PC. Next weekend we'll be diving into the mechanics. As always, I'm still not sure what it's gonna be. I'm trying to find something unique for the system to showcase as well. But definitely, if you played 13th Age before, shout out in the comments some of the things that are cool, some things we should be make sure to cover, or some things that you just really like about the system. Or even if you do on the flip side, some things that may have just not have clicked with you the first time, just so we can kind of keep an eye out for those too. But definitely make sure you come by Thursday, the 25th of January at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to see this system played out and get a chance to win your free copy of the core rulebook. But definitely like, subscribe, and if you get a chance to, we're actually on a different matter. We are starting our own Pathfinder 2E campaign that will be posted on my YouTube channel. We're doing our premiere for the Session Zero January 14th today for anybody that's watching live. So there'll be a link down in the description. Come check us out, hang out with us as we do that. But thanks for hanging out, and until next time.